In the United States, Muslim history of discrimination intersects with the enslavement of Africans, of whom around 10% were Muslims. Like other enslaved peoples, Muslim West Africans were forced to give up their religion and culture. Muslim Americans who began immigrating in the mid-1800s in small numbers from the Middle East and Asia were also often subject to the same discrimination as other non-white, non-Christian groups. The ability to immigrate was severely impacted by the 1924 Immigration Act, which greatly restricted the quota of people from Asia and other non-European countries, regions that were viewed as inferior, quote unquote. Today, stereotypical narratives about Islam and Muslims, which have roots as far back as the Crusades and European colonialism, have an impact on how Muslim Americans are viewed and treated. According to various polls, Muslims and their faith are consistently viewed in bad light, with only 15% of Americans having a favorable view of Islam and 1 out of 2 Americans having a negative view of Muslims. These perceptions are impacted by how Muslims are portrayed in the media and in Hollywood. So, for example, almost 80% of articles mentioning Muslims or Islam are negative. When there's a terror attack by Muslims in the United States, it actually receives 3.5 times as much media coverage as attacks by non-Muslims. Combined, these perceptions have real-life impact on Muslim Americans, both in their interpersonal and institutional experiences, as well as bigotry against them. So, for example, a 2021 poll found that over 2/3 of Muslims surveyed reported that they have personally experienced Islamophobia in their lifetimes. And among them, 3/4 responded that they had experienced Islamophobia in the last 12 months. Several polls for the last few years have found that Muslims experience the highest level of religious discrimination than any other religious group, around 62%. And this includes both interpersonal discrimination, such as from coworkers or on social media, as well as discrimination in institutional settings, such as at the airport or by law enforcement. This also impacts Muslim students in schools, where over half of Muslim families nationally say that their child was bullied for their faith, which is about nearly double the national average. And here in California, around the same percent of Muslim students reported being bullied for their faith. This also impacts Muslim job applicants, who report that they receive 32% fewer emails and 42% fewer callbacks. And while Muslims only make up 1 to 2% of the workforce, they file over 20% of religious discrimination claims. Islamophobic campaigns across the country have opposed the building of new mosques in recent years, and hundreds of mosques nationwide have been vandalized, including here in California, in addition to other types of anti-Muslim hate crimes. Wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and the war on terror, which treated Muslims as the enemy, have impacted policies, perceptions, and the treatment of Muslim Americans for decades. Discriminatory policies by the government, such as the 2017 travel ban, singled out Muslims based on a view of them as all being a security threat. So as you can see, Islamophobia continues to impact Muslim Americans in their daily lives, in these and many other ways. And as a Muslim American, I have experienced many of these issues myself, from being bullied in middle school and high school, my children being bullied, as well as more subtle types of bigotry and bias, such as, people assuming that I'm not American, such as assuming I don't speak good English, or just simply not talking to me at a soccer game or a PTA meeting. These kind of subtle biases and less subtle biases continue to impact Muslim Americans in their homes, in their work, in their schools, and in the public sphere. Thank you.